Welcome to the Midlife Men podcast with me, Philip Briscoe. Today, my guest is Mike Flynn, a man who seemed to have it all: successful job, family security, but behind the scenes, he was quietly unravelling. Mike's going to share how his midlife drift, burnouts, and emotional disconnection led him to a surprising turning point, and how he found his way forward. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, Philip. Good to be here.
Good to have you. So let's start by talking about the bigger picture. What was life like for you during your midlife years before everything started to change?
It's looking back, it's kind of strange. When you're in a situation, you don't really realize that it sounds as bad as it is until afterwards you reflect on it. And when I reflect back on it, I was existing. That's the only way I can describe it. I was getting through life, but I wasn't getting any joy or pleasure out of life. And as you said earlier on the surface, I had everything. I had the senior role, had my wife Diana, two boys, had the house, had the car. Everything on the outside looked perfect, but I just felt I wasn't content. Content isn't the right word. I just felt something was missing. I felt I should have been happier or felt better about it, but I didn't. And I went from, the way I think I described before, is that I went from one responsibility to another, and that's kind of fed up. And it was like, never question, because you're so busy, you never have time to stop and question what it's all about. And I don't know if you've ever felt it, but when I'd have a 2-week holiday, you'd get a little flicker and you start thinking, this is nice, I like this, something needs to change. But then you got back to work and you got sucked back into the routine of life again. And it just took over. And that's the magic for me, where you never had the space to really stop and think.
What did that look like, on the inside for you in terms of your mental well-being?
Well, I said to you, mental well-being is key for me, but it's like, and it kind of came to a head for me in midlife, but I have struggled, as I said to you before, with mental health from a young age. But specifically talking about midlife, it really found like the job was pretty full on, and I was carrying a lot with me on it like that. So I would work, I'd push everything, I'd keep pushing everything until I couldn't handle anymore. And then I'd more or less crash and burn. But what I used to do then was I'd kind of maybe even take some time off work, recharge the batteries. But I wasn't changing anything. I was just thinking, okay, this is it. That's just a one-off incident. I'm fine now. I'm back in the game. And I'd go back full on as I had been before. And that was the mad thing. I kept repeating the same pattern. And that is the definition, isn't it, to say, of insanity. Keep doing the same thing over and over again, expect a different outcome. So that's what I was doing. And until suddenly something changed. And what brought it to a head? Don't get me wrong, I was trying different things, and different things helped me during my midlife. Big fan of mindfulness. I did a John Kabat-Zinn mindfulness-based stress reduction course. Loved that so much. Got so much out of it. I trained to be a teacher myself on it. But that's about living in the present moment, and it's coming out of up here, this magic head, and just coming back into the present moment.
And when you talk about these moments of burnout, can you describe, what were the signs? How did this manifest?
It happened slowly. It wasn't like you woke up one morning and you felt you couldn't cope. You could see the signs, but I kind of ignored them. I could feel like I'm getting a bit tired. I'm getting a bit narky with my family. Things feel a bit pressurized at work. And I thought if I just put in a few extra hours this evening or at the weekend, I get ahead of the curve. And it kind of kept going, and things just got tougher and tougher. And I just kept ignoring it. And I was living in my head a lot, so I was anxious and I went down, and it was taking longer to do stuff. I wasn't pleasuring simple things in life were gone. But I really noticed it in the workspace, because that's where we spend a lot of our time. And I felt like, I'm not performing. I'm not on my game. I'm going to get found out. They'll find out I can't do the job. And you really kind of for me, it was losing my confidence and my belief in myself. It's a scary, horrible place to be when you're rocking up at work to a job you could do easy before, and you're questioning yourself and you're doubting yourself. So everything becomes a bigger deal.
Was there any support, either at work, or did you, talk to anyone about how you felt?
Yeah, I was because I struggled with mental health before. I talked to my wife Diana about it, but I realized, and for me as well, you need to talk to somebody else. It's not fair, because with depression, anxiety, and that it's a gift that keeps on giving. You don't just impact yourself, it impacts everybody close to you as well. Work was brilliant. They really supported me. They gave me the time off when I needed. They were very supportive, so I can't fault that at all. And because I had trained to be a mindfulness teacher. I was offering that at work. So it was interesting. I was a well-being champion. So it was actually worked out it sounds mad, but it worked out quite well because I was pretty open about my struggles. And it's amazing when you were open at work, a senior leader being open, it allowed other people, like, get them to permission to say, I've been struggling too. And I got a lot of positive feedback for going public with it, if you like.
And then what happens at work then? So if this was an ongoing cycle of working really hard, thinking you're not on your working top of your game, burnout, how long did that go on for until something changed?
I went through the cycle for quite a few years because I always felt it was something I was doing wrong, and I should be able to do the job, and I should be able to do the art. And again, I don't know what other people's experience are, but we give a lot to work. And when I reflect back on it, it's not just the hours that I was giving to it, it was the energy. So I didn't have energy for anything else. And to me, it's very much a balanced life. I don't believe in the work-life balance because work is part of life, an important part of life. But you need time for friends, for relaxation, for own time, for exercise. And it's just getting the balanced life. And that's different to everybody. For everybody, it's a different balance. But I kind of got caught up, and I know it's a classic term with the rat race. I got caught up in that, and I was working and living in London, and that even emphasized it even more. So I kept on going until, I guess, I said I was practicing the mindfulness. And as an aside, I was really interested in, because when I was a leader, the buzz I got was out of seeing people develop and grow in the job. So I was really interested in coaching. So I looked at exploring that because I had a coach myself at work, but I looked to explore to training it. And then I got made redundant in November 23. And classic Mike would have kind of panicked, spiraled, thinking, you're getting on, man, how are you going to get another job? What's going to happen, etc. But I kind of, because over the build-up and the work I'd done on myself over the years, I was able to see it as an opportunity. So I embraced it. I went for it, and I trained to be a coach. And when you train to be a coach, you really get to know yourself as well, and I did. And I realized that I'm not living the life I want. That's what I don't know what I want, but the key thing was I didn't know what I wanted, because I thought I'd never stop long enough, and I never figured out what does Mike want. So I went through a process of exploring that myself, and a key for me was identifying my personal core values. And values mean different things to different people, but for me, it's like the attributes of the person I aspire to be. And it doesn't matter about the words. There's loads of words out there for values online. It doesn't matter what word you use. It's how you describe it to you. Because to me, that was the most powerful starting point, was identifying what's really important to me.
So there are probably lots of people listening to this, relating to this, thinking, I'm in a job, I've given everything to my career, but I just don't feel fulfilled. I'm getting older now, but I'm terrified of changing my job or leaving my job or starting a new career because I've got commitments and a mortgage and and I'm too old. How you talked about looking at your own values. How would someone go about starting that process, especially when you're in a bit of a panic anyway, because there doesn't seem to be an easy way to move forward?
Yeah, I think it depends on where you're at, to be honest with you. If you're really struggling with your mental health, for example, for me with anxiety and depression, looking at your values isn't going to be the first starting point. Because for me, I wouldn't have been in the headspace to do that. I wouldn't have the clarity. My head was muddled up. The key thing is getting some help, reaching out. You're not alone. And to me, it was reaching out to your GP. There's a number of different methods. GP who will probably, I don't agree with, but the first protocol is usually medication. But for me, it helped because when I was rock bottom, it kind of got you off the bottom. But therapy as well, I think, is a way to get it. And it's, you got to try. It is trying what works for you, because I tried psychotherapy earlier on in my life. Didn't work for me, but everyone's different. CBT did work because it has more practical stuff. And something I mentioned earlier, acceptance commitment therapy, helped me as well.
Can you just, for benefit of people listening who might not know the difference or have heard of these techniques, can you just talk a bit about those three different approaches? So psychotherapy, CBT, and then the last one that you said that I can't remember what it's called. Yeah.
Psychotherapy to me is well, I guess what's known traditionally as talking therapy. So it was, when I did it, it was very much exploring, looking back in your past and what was the triggers to cause this anxiety and depression. And it didn't work for me because I was going back to my childhood, and I thought, looking back, I thought I had a pretty decent childhood. It did make me wonder, was it so? Because you start to question stuff. So I went for a good while, maybe a year or so, more even. But I didn't feel, it was useful going dumping out of your head, but I didn't feel I was making any progress. And it was a few years later, then I got referred to CBT, cognitive-based therapy, which is really about, look, yes, you identify where you're at, but it's looking forward and doing exercise and practical stuff and changing your mindset and changing your thinking. Because that's really powerful. Because to me, what brought me down was like the inner critic, as I want to call it. Like, it's that voice in your head that when things went wrong, the question, you're not up to it, you can't do the job, you're making a mistake, messing. And it sounds simple now, but looking back, thoughts are just thoughts. You can decide whether you engage with them or not. And it's simple rewiring your thought process. So ignoring the negative thought and doing affirmations or mantra or positive statements that mean something to you personally. But that's really powerful too. But then it was about when I really hit rock bottom in Christmas of 2021, and we can come back to that. But just to explain, I came across a therapist. I got recommended to a therapist who dealt with something called acceptance commitment therapy. I never had heard of that before, but the work I did with Sophie was really powerful. It was talking about where I was, but it was looking at going forward. And it sounds mad now, but I had dealt with anxiety and depression for years. And the one thing I thought I had accepted it, but I hadn't. And when someone during one session, it was just like, I accepted where I was. And that is not giving up, not resigning yourself, but it's powerful and liberating, because by accepting where I was, I could now make changes to move forward.
And so, you mentioned your low point in December 21. Can you talk a bit more about that?
That was the lowest. I said I had depression, but that was the lowest I've ever hit. And it really brings it home to you when it's over Christmas. I was like a dark cloud. I was like, I could feel I was sucking the energy out of the room, and felt like the house. I was dragging my wife and my 2 boys down with me as well. But I got so low, I was contemplating suicide. I had thinking, if I just go out and do it, I'll be doing everyone a favor. Now, people can say, how can people even think that or do that? Because think it's the people they're leaving behind. For me, I thought I'd be doing them a favor if I wasn't there anymore. They could get on with their lives. And it may sound weird, but it wasn't the thought of leaving my wife and boys behind that kind of pulled me back. It was thinking, if this is as bad as it gets and I'm still here, why don't I just go for life and try different things and go for and explore? What have you got to lose? If you're still here, what have you got to lose? That's a gain. So, and my wife at that time, it was still my wife. When I say at that time, I mean at that Christmas, she came up across this thing called Andy's Man Club, which is and I'd never heard of it. And it was a meeting locally in Plymouth where I live in January. So I went along to that, and that was a peer support group for men. I'd never been in a group where men talked to other men about real stuff. Usual pub banter talk is different. It never gets deep, but that was really powerful. And that kind of was a journey that's got me on the track. And it was a combination of that, getting medication sorted and counseling, therapy with Sophie. But it wasn't an overnight change. It took a while.
So there are lots of things then, I guess, that led to your recovery. Can you talk a bit more, because people listening are probably really interested about Andy's Man Club. I know that they have sessions all over the country. But if somebody's wondering what does that look like, for the first time, and probably feeling, I know from experience of trying to run events that a lot of men are a bit put off by going to anything that talks about mental health, or, perhaps terrified of having to open up in front of other people. What can men expect if they go along?
Well, just to give you some background, it was set up following death by suicide of a guy called Andy Roberts. That's hence the name. And it was set up by his brother-in-law Luke and his mother Elaine to do something positive out of it. And it's been running since 2016, I believe, in Halifax, and 9 men turned up at the first meeting. Recently, it's a nationwide thing, as you said, and last Monday, I think about 6,000 men went through the doors, and that's happening on a regular basis. It sounds like a lot of numbers, but the key thing, what I love about the ethos, it's about helping that one man. If you can just make a difference for one man. And it's a peer support group, and the beauty of it, it was tough. It's tough walking through that door the first night, but the guys are so welcoming. And every it's run by groups, it breaks down into smaller groups in the venue, and they're run by facilitators, 2 or 3 facilitators each group. But the beauty of it is virtually every one of the facilitators that started off as a user of the service themselves. So I'm a facilitator now, but I went there originally as a user. As it runs every Monday night between 7 and 9. There's no referral needed. It's no charge to it. You just rock up. It breaks into the groups. There's a standard format. We go through 5 questions each Monday night. The first 3 are usually the same. It's like your name and a reason for being here. And then it goes round again. And what's your positive reason? What's one positive from the week? No matter how bad, you'll find something. We even say that's a positive. You're here for the first meeting type of thing. Then question 3, where a lot of guys can open up or not, is anything you want to share or get off your chest. And then we try to take a break if we have time, and we come back, and then we lighten it up a bit. So the last 2 questions will change every week. And it could be, for example, if you could star in any movie, what would it be and why? Now, the key thing, there's no pressure to talk. There's a thing called the talking ball. And it's past the facilitator starts, and they'll answer each question first. So pass the ball around. If you want to talk, you hold on to the ball. Now, while you have the ball, nobody interrupts you. It's your space, your time. If you don't want to talk that week or pass on a question, you just pass the ball on. No questions, no judgment. One thing we don't give advice. We share about what worked for me, because what worked for me may not work for you. But it's not giving advice or trying to fix other guys, because the key thing is this is the first time a lot of these guys have opened up, and giving them the space is the magic part to actually talk. Because if you give people space, they probably say something they had never intended coming out with, but they feel more comfortable in that. And it's amazing. I've been there 3.5 years now, and it's really powerful to see guys come in and to see the change over time. Because it's peers. It's one different thing going to counseling and someone therapist telling you what they think you should do or that. But to hear from a guy, you think, that's me. I know where you've been, and there is light at the end of the tunnel.
And that's really the reason for this podcast. Just trying to hope that stories that men share resonate with other men listening, and they can start their own, journeys, whatever that might be. Because as you said, they're all individual. So going back to you, you were at work. You were then made redundant, but you had already been training in mindfulness and mental health coaching. So I guess for you, it was, you came to the conclusion that you wanted to take coaching on as a career. What advice do you give to those men that perhaps have no idea what they want to do, and they've thought about values, etc., but how do you go about finding a new vocation? In midlife, say you're 50, how do you even start that process? It's challenging, and I guess it's so challenging. A lot of men may not even try and start to do it.
That's the scary thing. It's like people midlife, and just talking about midlife men particularly. And we all know the jokes: midlife crisis, younger women, faster cars. But it's a natural transition that men go through in life, to look back and reflect on where life has come so far and where they want to go next. And when I looked up the word crisis, actually the original Greek word, or the ancient Greek word, it doesn't mean bad stuff. It's like a crossroads or a choice point. So what I did for myself, I worked through my personal values, and I kind of found my way along. And then I looked at what the purpose statement, and purpose of life is grand. It's not about saving the world. It's really, what contribution do you want to make in the next phase of your life? It can be big or small as you want, and it's key to you. And it's different ways you can work through that. Once I did that, and then I said, okay, so I know my personal values. I know my purpose. What does my life look like if I'm living according to those values and purpose? And it can be broad and generic. But the key thing then is that's all nice, well and good. It's all big picture. How does it translate into your everyday life? I don't know if you've ever heard of the Wheel of Life, Philip. But I'll share the tool with you, and if you want, you can share it with your listener. But it's literally a circle, a segment. You break it into 8 segments, and it can be less or more. And you identify what areas of your life are important to you. It can be family, friends, work, health, etc. And simply scoring yourself, it's your perception, on a score of 1 to 10. How satisfied you are with that part of your life. Once you have that, then you start working at goals and action plans for each of those areas of the life. Now, it sounds a lot, and it doesn't happen overnight. But going through that journey myself inspired me to develop the program, because as a coach, and for midlife men, which is called Ignite Your Purpose, Create the Life You Truly Desire. Now you can work on it, and people can look at the website and they'll get some pointers themselves, and there's free resources here. But if anybody wants to work with me, just reach out. But that's not the purpose of this call. It's not new business for me. It's explaining my journey. So I went through that journey, and the key thing is, as well, is what I found powerful is you got to hold yourself to account. So like as I'm talking to you now, if I look to my left, I've got my top values for daily living printed and framed on my desk. So it reminds me every day, because it's got to reinforce it. But the beauty of it, and I think for me, the personal core values, that's such a key starting point, because it's like what's important to you, but also it's not about making a right or wrong decision. Then it's like, does it take me towards my values or away from my values, which is really powerful. But it's hard to make that change horses in midstream, if you like. But my plan before I got made redundant was to start coaching, as the cool term, the side hustle, to start doing a little bit on the side. So you don't have to change everything in one fell swoop. The way my timing worked out, it worked out for that. But my vision at that time was to have a portfolio, do a bit of the marketing and fundraising. I was doing a bit of life coaching and that. So it's working out what's right for you. And you identify that by looking at your values, by sitting and figuring out what your life purpose is. And it sounds grand, but it's not. It's just taking the time and creating that space for yourself to work through it.
I guess a lot of times it's driven by desire to earn money, to earn as bigger income as you have, because, you live, everyone lives slightly beyond their means. And so, you're always overcommitted in terms of your outgoings. And how do you help men who, want to still earn that amount of money, change their jobs? I mean, how do you kind of review, is that their goal? How does that relate to their values?
That's brilliant, because I say it's like, I was in that catch-22 situation. I started off working and it was get the next job, get more money, get the next job, get more money. And I never stopped to really question, is that what I want? It was just that was society's way of measuring success. And part of my work doing my values, it doesn't flow. It doesn't mean I wouldn't like a nice holiday or that, but it's not the be all and end all for me anymore. Because I've found the more money you earned, the more expensive restaurant you ate and the more expensive holidays you took. And if that's what you really want, then you make that conscious decision what you want, what cost you're willing to pay for that. But for me, looking at it was like really important to me. It's like being there for my family. I realized I was working I moved to Plymouth 10 years ago. I was working in London and I no jobs down here. So I was commuting up every Monday and down on Thursday. It was only when COVID hit, I realized how much I was missing out on my family. It's a small daily thing. And I don't want to look back in years to come and think the boys didn't know me growing up and that. So and that's why the values are so important, because once you identify and the segments of life that are important to you, then it's up to you. You make your choice. Are you going to go for it? Or are you going to sell yourself short? But at least you've made the choice. You're not drifting through life in automatic pilot. So
once you've made the change and decided what you wanted to do, you've talked about your mental health challenges, not just in midlife, but throughout your life, things like depression. How did you find that changed? Once you were doing what made you feel fulfilled, in the coaching.
And I guess it was before I started the coaching even, but the one thing I learned through my journey through mental health is I was very much, when I was in the depth of it, was very much about just getting fixed, getting out of it. And I thought, that's it. I've cracked it. I'm okay. On to the next. Now my life's going to be hunky-dory. But the key things that I've learned about it was, first of all, the thing that I mentioned was acceptance. Accept where you are. Second thing that I learned to share with people who are struggling is there's lots of help out there. You can get the medication, you can get the counseling, but it's personal responsibility. No one is going to fix you, but this is just my story, but no one was going to fix me but myself. And that's the problem sometimes for me. I was looking to other people to fix me. And really, I was the only one that has to do it. The third thing I learned was go easy on yourself, self-compassion. There's no one better at beating me up than me myself. So it's like trying to change that. But the key thing as well is make some changes. The problem with me was I was getting well and going back and repeating the same pattern over and over again. Put too many hours into work, not identifying where I wanted to spend my time in my life. And what really helped me was I started doing it about 10, 12 years ago, was mindfulness. There was a mindfulness-based stress reduction course. I did it for work. And it sounds simple. It's about being present in your life, for your life, not just for the good times, but for the tough times too. And again, key thing in mindfulness is acceptance, but it's not resignation. It's not giving up. It's just accepting where you are before you move forward. But one of the key things as well is to maintain it. Just because you come out of a hole doesn't mean you're not going to slip back into it unless you do a maintenance program. If you go to the gym and get fit, you don't stop and think you're going to stay fit for the rest of your life. It's like the same thing with mental health. So I've got my program that I do, and it's like self-care. And self-care is not selfish because you need to be strong to be there for your family and friends as well. But the key foundations, and it sounds simple and it's not rocket science, it's nutrition, it's exercise, it's connecting with people, it's my meditation. And one thing for me was going alcohol-free was a big difference for me because drink didn't cause my depression or anxiety, but it didn't bloody help it because sometimes I use it as an escape to get out of my head. And man, you woke up the next morning and twice as bad a place where you started.
And can you just get, we hear the term mindfulness used a lot, and unless you've actually explored that, it can be one of those words that just doesn't really mean anything. And you just don't, you think, well, that's just a non-word. I won't even recognize that. What does that mean practically if you're starting to, adopt a mindfulness in your life?
It's very, because mindfulness is that when you talk about it, sometimes it's like very woo, it's a bit airy-fairy, it's a bit out there. Like, it's like my 13-year-old says sometimes to me, so Dad, are you going to levitate now for us? It's that. But it's the simple way, and there's a complex definition, but the way I look at it is being present in your life for your life. Not as you hoped it would be, not as you wished it would be, not as you expected it to be, but for what's actually happening right now in the present moment. So you've got your plan for the day, something goes haywire, you don't disappear into your head and start thinking, oh, if only it worked out okay, or bigger example, if I'd taken that job 5 years ago, my life would be so much better now. It's living in the present, and it's simple, but it's not easy. And I say simple because some of the practice is simple. It's just focusing. To become present is simply focusing on your breath. You don't breathe in the past or the future. So if you're aware of your breath, you're present. But the mind is going to jump all over the place. And it's not about getting zen-like calm. It's just noticing when the mind jumps. There's me thinking about work again. Bring it back to the breath. You're building that mental muscle. It's not about getting that clear mind. And what you do is you become quicker at noticing when you're not in the present, when you're disappearing into the past or the future. But as mindfulness can be brought to everything, it can be the simple thing in life. It's like when you're walking, just being aware of your feet when you're walking, the pressure on the ground. It sounds mad, but it's really powerful. It's like when you're out, you ever go for a walk on a Sunday afternoon? Do you remember the trees, the sunlight? It's noticing things around you. The way I describe it is like, it's taking yourself off automatic pilot. And the question I always ask people when I'm doing a course or program, do any of you drive? Have you ever driven from A to B and wondered how you got there? You can't remember the journey. That's automatic pilot. And it's taking it out of that. It's noticing where you are, being present. And for your purpose in life, midlife, it's living a life of intention. You're making conscious choices of what you're doing. You're not drifting. You're not operating an automatic pilot. I've always done this. I'll always do it. It's just the way it is. It's stopping and owning your life, being present in it.
So it sounds like you're, if you're in a situation where you don't know how to resolve your current work environment, for example, you can practice mindfulness, but does that mean that you are planning, you're right now today planning perhaps a small step to take you to tomorrow that's in the right direction?
Yeah, it can be that, but it's rather than you're making a conscious decision to think about what step you're going to take. You're not just there feeling, oh, it's horrible, it's terrible, what am I going to do? Going over and over in your mind. It's taking action. Because mindful about it's all well and good being present, but you need to take some action to change, to move forward.
Great. Okay. And so you've talked about, you give them some great advice here. So we'll put links into the Andy's Man Club in the show notes, and also how people can contact you. Is there anything else you'd like to kind of leave us with in terms of, how do you, if anything you've said resonates, and you've talked a lot about what you can do, but someone listens to this and thinks, that's me. I'm Mike where he was, 5 years ago. What's the first step they should take in your, and I know we're not telling people what they can do, but just in terms of your experience, what advice would you give them?
The first step, and again, I would really emphasize, I think that's important what you say, Philip. It's what worked for me, and I'm sharing it with what works. Hopefully it'll work for some other guys. But the key thing I would say, if you're struggling with mental health, or even if you know someone who is, don't wait until you're desperate. Act now. Reach out, talk to somebody, share it. Talk to your GP. They will explore the different options with you. I would go to a medical professional, but in the meantime as well, go to Andy's Man Club. Look at them online. Find a meeting. You do online. Go for it. There's no pressure. We say give it 3 goes. Because it's pretty powerful talking to peers. It's powerful to hear that somebody else is in the same space as you and they can further along the thing. It depends if you're struggling with midlife generally and you're wondering, is this as good as it gets or what's next? Do the values work? But if you're in a mental health situation, get that nailed first. You need to be in a decent place before you can start exploring life and values and purpose and that. But the key thing is not to isolate, not to keep it to yourself. And what we notice as well, some guys come to Andy's Man Club and say, but my life's okay compared to other people. It's not about other people, it's how you are feeling. So do not belittle your problems. It's your problems, it's your challenges. But it's also, I would say to them, the really liberating, you have the answer within yourself. You just need help to get in touch with that. But you can fix yourself. No one else can and no one else may.
Mike, thank you. On that note, I think I'll just thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks, Philip.
Thank you for listening to the Midlife Men podcast with me, Philip Briscoe. If you want to find out more about Mike and how he works with men to ignite their purpose, visit his website, mikeflynn.coach. Mike talks a lot about Andy's Man Club in the UK. It's a free peer-to-peer support group across the nation and online, running every Monday evening. To find out more, visit andysmanclub.co.uk. And to raise the profile of the podcast, it would really help if you could leave me a rating or review it. And please do promote it through your own networks. Finally, there's now a book called Men Speak Up, Journeys Through Mental Health. And it's based on some of the podcast stories and available to buy on Amazon and through other online retailers.